I think for me, real innovation is a responsiveness to, what is happening in your school and what is happening on the horizon. And I think earlier in my teaching career, I believed I had to have all the answers. I thought that I had to know. And I now know that I am a much better educator. I'm a better leader because I acknowledge that I don't.
Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of the Learn It podcast. I am really excited to have Leanne joining us today. Thank you so much for being here.
You are most welcome.
We're so excited to get into these stories and these wonderful insights that you'll bring with us today. So
Thank you.
We'll start with your childhood, like we always do. So
Okay.
I'd love to learn a little bit about how you grew up. What was it like? More interestingly, what would your teachers describe you as, and what was that like?
What would my teachers describe me as? So I grew up in Toronto, and I like to say that I grew up in the Junction area before it was cool and hip and trendy. So it was very much a working class neighborhood near the stockyards. I attended Annette Street Public School for much of my early elementary years. And I think that my teachers would have described me as just a really good student. I loved school. I loved learning. I was shy, but I was just one of the students who was a voracious reader, was quiet, but just loved showing up every day. And I was the eldest of two, and I think sometimes as the eldest, you come up with those expectations of being well behaved. So I was a good student early on, and just was passionate about learning.
You know what's funny? A lot of the people that we've had on the show, principals, head of schools, superintendents, directors of education, whenever I ask them this question, a lot of them say they were very quiet. And I don't know if it's a trend or if it's something there, but it's so interesting because I'd say 9 out of 10 would call themselves a bit more on the introverted side, or they'd say they're a bit quieter. And weirdly enough, a lot of them also like to read. So I don't know if it's a trend, but it's always an interesting observation to see that. And did you always know that education was something that you wanted to play in?
I really did. I wanted to be a teacher for as long as I can remember. And I used to line up my teddy bears and my dolls and my younger sister and play school. I think that's what horribly damaged my younger sister's appreciation of classrooms, unfortunately. But yeah, I always did want to be a teacher. I didn't start out in education, interestingly enough, but it was always something that I really wanted to do.
And what did you start out in?
When I was graduating from university, it was at a time in Ontario when teachers were being laid off. There just weren't jobs. I wasn't in a position to go overseas like many did. And I had really good advice given to me, and that was just go out and work, get experience.
Yeah.
And if you're meant to be a teacher, you will find your way back. Yeah. And it was the best advice because I got to spend close to 9 years working in the Canadian publishing industry.
Wow.
I worked in Canada. I worked in Germany, in France, and in England.
Wow.
And it actually really informed my work in schools and later becoming a head of school. But as was true to the advice, I just kept coming back to the notion that it wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. It was wonderful in my early, later 20s, but I was really meant to be in classrooms. So when the market began to open up, when I moved back to Canada, I got into teaching as I always wanted to, and I just haven't looked back since then.
Wow, that's amazing. And out of all the countries that you went to, what was the most memorable one?
I loved all of them. I have to say I have a real affinity for England, for London. Living in London was very special. Living in Paris was exciting and exhausting. It's just exhausting, but loved it. But I do have a soft spot for the city of London. It's also where my family's from.
Got,
just beautiful.
All the lovely food over there.
Just beautiful, yes.
God, okay, I've been to London twice. I also love it, but it just rains too much over there.
It does. We dress for the weather. But it rained a lot. I actually having grown up in Canada, I think I know cold. But I don't think I was ever as cold as I was oftentimes in London.
The wind.
Because
It's all the wind.
and it would just, the dampness would just go through you. But it was wonderful. I loved it. And it was a great experience. I've never regretted doing it, but I knew I was meant to be in education.
I love it. And today you're, the principal head of school of UTS, which I
Yes.
think is incredible, very inspiring.
Thank you.
Can you share what are some moments that you remember, whether it was as a teacher, whether it was a principal, like what were some moments that you felt defined a lot of what you're doing today? Are there any memorable things over there?
Sure. Well, I think like any teacher, that first class you have, that first time in the classroom, your first job is incredibly formative. And my first classroom teaching duty was in junior, senior kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
At Bedford Park Public School. And I have taught from kindergarten all the way up to university level now. And I will tell you that if you can put 24 children into snowsuits, you can pretty much do anything.
Wow.
So that was really formative for me. Working in the public system in special education and as a special education consultant was very formative. It really influenced how I understand families and students in classrooms and in systems. And that was really important to me to understand. And I think has always shaped how I deal with challenges that arise sometimes. And actually, one of the things that also really informed me in my work and as a teacher was the doctoral work that I did when I was at the university. I was blessed to be part of a larger research project with U of T, OISE, and Johns Hopkins University. But all of the research that I was doing was across U.S. states. And to be able to be in classrooms in so many different contexts, in so many different states with different populations, really gave me a deep appreciation of how important context is to what happens in a school and in classrooms. And that work was really very influential in how I came to understand the work of principals supporting teachers and working with families in schools.
Can I get a copy of that research? Is it public?
Yes. Yes, it is. Like all good PhD dissertations at the University of Toronto, it is available at the library, and I suspect it has not been checked out once. So you are welcome to.
I will.
Yep, there you go.
Because I'm interested too, and I think it's we go to different schools, and every time we go there, it's so different.
Very different.
And
yes.
What I find interesting, it's different sometimes in good ways and sometimes in lesser in more negative ways. But all the teachers still love their job. Like, it's not like someone does not want to be there. I think the teachers, the admin, the principal, they're passionate people. It's education is purely driven by passion.
Yeah.
Yet you see the students have different ways of behaving
Absolutely.
and approaching things. So I'd be very curious to know what your research showed in terms of different states.
There you go.
Well.
No, school culture is important, and it shapes things in ways that I think school leaders need to really be aware of.
Yeah, and let's go deeper into this sort of I want to know more from you about these two worlds of public versus independent schools, right? Do you find that there needs to be a bit more collaboration? Do you find that they're good the way they are? Like, you've been in both systems.
Yes.
I think not many people have been in both systems. Most people have picked one or the other. Can you tell us what the similarities, differences are? And in an ideal world, what does those two worlds coming together look like?
So that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think that the similarities are evident in that, they are serving students, they are serving needs.
Yeah.
And I think one of the challenges of large systems is the vastness of the diversity of needs that they are serving. The degree to which funding can become a constraint, particularly in schools where needs are greater than the resources that are needed to meet those needs. So I think that in both systems, you have teachers who care deeply. In both systems, you have parents who only want the best for their children.
Right.
I think the reasons for parents electing independent systems or private systems, oftentimes, there are a variety of reasons. Sometimes there are things like, it's a family where everyone has attended that school for generations. that certainly exists.
Mhm.
But I think when you're talking just about more the average family who is looking at the notion of school choice, in my experience, when they are electing to move into an independent system or the public system, it's oftentimes because there is a need that they feel hasn't been able to be met in the
Mm.
public system.
Right.
And I think that is it's it's unfortunate, but it is a reality. And having worked in the public system, having worked in special ed across the system, I'm really very aware of the pressures that come to bear
Mm.
at the school level. And I think despite the best efforts of teachers at times,
Yeah.
it can become difficult to meet all of those needs. I know that at the University of Toronto schools, one of the things that we are very committed to doing is to doing our best to find possible partnerships
Mhm.
and to find ways of supporting and giving back.
Yeah.
Not in a way that is patronizing, because I don't believe that we know better than our colleagues in public schools, but in a way that is, if possible, a sharing of resources and ideas
Mhm. A
and
more
coming
productive
together,
outcome.
coming together to collaborate.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's very well said. And, based on all of your experiences and your role today as well and being a principal, what do you think defines a good principal? What do you think are the core components in your mind that say, you know what, if you have these, you'd likely do well at this?
If you have these, okay. So if someone said, I'm thinking of becoming a principal, what do I need to know? And I can just speak for myself. And this will be no surprise.
Mm.
It is not an 8 to 4 or a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
You really are. It really is a commitment. It is a life choice because you are really needing to be there whenever you are needed.
Hmm.
You do not get your summers off, despite what many people might think. Much of my most productive time, after I do try to take some time in the summer, but most of my productive time is when the team and I are planning before the students are coming back, or
Mm.
at the end of the year before we head off for a bit of a break, when we're thinking about and reflecting on the year that we just had. You have to be adaptable. You have to be open to new learning. You also have to know that you will never, ever win a power struggle with a student.
Mm.
It just isn't going to work.
Right.
For me, I have to have a sense of humor, and you have to have a lot of compassion and empathy, because much of your job is spent serving and supporting the staff in your building, the
Mm.
students and the families. So I think for me, it's delightful, it's rewarding, it's engaging. Um, it's a lot of work, but it's just what I was meant to do.
You wouldn't have it any other way.
I wouldn't have it any other way. A little
And
bit more sleep would be good. That's okay.
do you think the students are scared of you?
No, they are not. Do I hope they respect me? Yes, I do believe they do. I hope they do.
Mhm.
Are they afraid of me? Not really. I mean, they might on some level think, oh, I'm being called to the principal's office. But
But
when
they
they,
know it's just you in there,
yes, but when they see me in the halls, when I try when I can to be on the doors to greet with them in the morning. There's a lot of smiles.
Yeah.
They do get to know me. When they have to come talk to me about something serious, I'm always very thoughtful and calm and kind. I do not raise my voice. That is not my style.
Yeah.
But they know we're going to have a thoughtful conversation together.
Yeah.
They know they're going to be asked to reflect on why they thought whatever they did was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't. So,
I grew up in Uganda, and that's where I did my school.
yes.
And our principal was the scariest. Like, we would.
There are scary
There was
principals out
fear.
there.
Yeah, like it was
There
like,
really are. Yeah.
And then right before that principal, we had another one who was super nice. And, they were in the hallways. And this other principal was never in the hallways.
Yeah.
It was just in the office. And if you got called to the office, you're going down, right? But I think it's, from a student's perspective, I think it adds a lot more calmness and a more fulfilling feeling when you see your principal coming into the class sometimes and saying hi,
Yes.
or at the entrance of the school. And I think, to me, it's the small things that make a big difference. And I think those are the type of things that you're sharing that do.
It is. I mean, it's really about setting expectations, and it's about setting a standard for learning and behavior and respect. I really believe that we uphold those standards at our school. I believe that the students know that I have pretty high expectations of them.
Yeah.
But I don't think they have to really be afraid of me in order for that to happen.
Absolutely. And when you think back to your years as an educator, sort of in the system, what's something that you believed in then that you see differently now?
I think earlier in my teaching career, I believed I had to have all the answers. I thought that I had to know. And I now know that I am a much better educator. I'm a better leader because I acknowledge that I don't have the answers. And I think in doing so, I create a safer space for our teachers and our students to not feel that they have to be perfect, to also acknowledge when they too do not know.
Right.
So I used to think that I had to have it right all the time. And gosh, that was wrong. Definitely wrong and exhausting.
Yeah. I mean, then there's the pressure to always find the answer before
That's
asking.
right. Yeah.
Right? Oh, I like that. And, one of the things about UTS that I was reading a little bit about, it has a very rich history.
It does.
Especially around its academics and its success. And that's why I assume also you have an expectation that the students carry that with pride and keep continuing on that. And one of the things I'd really love to learn from you is, academic excellence versus student well-being. I think those two go hand in hand, but also I want to know more about how do you create an environment that allows students to become really high academic achievers? And are there things, programs, success stories from UTS that others can learn from, other schools or other principals can learn from?
That's such a good question. We are completely a merit-based admissions school. So all of our students test in. We don't have legacy admissions. So whether your grandfather went to UTS, that is not getting you a spot. If your family donates money, that is not guaranteeing you a spot. It really is about testing in because our academic program is so rigorous that we need to make sure that there's a fit there. So in many ways, we have high achieving, highly curious students coming into our building. The job of our teachers oftentimes is to channel and to harness that incredible inquisitiveness and curiosity and to make sure that it is going in the right direction. So I know that our teachers feel that they are very blessed because they are working with a group of students that are just literally like sponges. And oftentimes our teachers are working hard to keep up with their students.
Wow.
So it might be in that sense a little bit different than some schools. But I think what I learn and what I see from that is the commitment of our teachers to really listen deeply to where the students want to go and excel in their learning. Our ability to help them make connections outside of our school to really deepen the learning experiences, whether that be working in, a research lab at one of the hospitals at a ridiculously young age in the summer, or whether it's, helping them pursue their passion in math and design, or in theater or music. We really try to make sure that there are experiences there. I think something that other schools do, well, many, and we certainly do, and this is where I think some of the learning can come from, is we lean on the experience and expertise of our incredible alumni who continue to give back to the school. They will volunteer to mentor students who have a passion for a particular area. They'll come into the school and make connections. They will, invite a group of students to, shadow a project for 2 weeks in something very specific to their industry. And I think that our alumni really set us apart in terms of what the students have to benefit from.
Right.
So it's fun. And when you mention wellness, I will not deny that it is a fast-paced school and that it can be at times incredibly stressful and feel competitive at times. But the thing that I've noticed, and as I've come to more understand deeply, and this goes back to my own research, the students in and of themselves, by virtue of who they are craving that fast pace. So for us to pull it back because we don't think it is good for them,
It's doing them injustice.
Yes, it's not respecting who they are. So
Right.
our job is to recognize the pace and to help them understand, when it becomes too much for them individually, what the strategies are to help them cope with it. But for us to say, you need to slow down, will only serve as a source of frustration for them. So it's a fine balancing act. We hope that they can learn self-care. And as anybody who has parented an adolescent will tell you, they're not very good at that sometimes.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to step in as the wise parent and ask them to just take a pause.
Yeah.
But we recognize that inherent within them, as many of them are gifted learners, we have to recognize the way in which they're going to be learning and just respond to it. And I think that that's what good schools do.
Yeah.
They know who they have in their school, they know who they have in their classrooms, and they develop programs that respond to who they have in front of them.
Yeah, and I think that's why even when you talk about schools, culture is such an important thing, right?
Huge. Yeah,
because
huge.
UTS is known for what it's known for. And so,
is, yeah.
You can't get a bunch of other students, no matter how great they are, and try and integrate them into the culture, right? There has to be some sort of fit beforehand for them to say, I want to be in this kind of environment.
Absolutely.
Or I would enjoy this kind of environment more than I would something else. Right?
Absolutely. I always tell parents that there is no one school that is perfect for every child. And that when you're looking at schools, it's about the goodness of fit.
Yes.
And also when you look at a school like UTS, it's not enough to just know that your child is very bright. You also need to know that type of environment, that fastness is going to be one that they will thrive in, or at least enjoy, or be challenged by, rather than a really bright child who's going to feel overwhelmed. And so it's not just about being bright. It's about being bright and wanting to have that type of immersive experience, which also includes a lot of fun, because no matter what they do, they tend to do two extremes in good ways. So it's fun, it's robust, but it's fast. And I think when parents are thinking about schools for their children, it's really important to think about the personality and the needs of their own child.
Yeah. And one of the things I was really curious about is, do you feel that has a bit of a trade-off with students learning, human skills, such as going out in the field and learning more, not necessarily collaboration, because I assume they get that a lot, but, more like public speaking skills or negotiation skills, like skills that you wouldn't necessarily learn through an academic lens. But do you think there's a trade-off that occurs over there, or do you think they learn those skills in other ways?
Well, I think that what happens in a school like UTS is that much of what you're talking about is evident in the classrooms, but also the degree to which our co-curricular program extends their learning is quite remarkable. We have over 100 clubs that are all student-led.
Wow.
UTS founded SOMA, which is the Southern Ontario Model UN Association. It's actually taking place this month. So our students are participating in the Global Ideas Institute at the Monk School. They are organizing and coordinating SOMA. Our students are in debate contests around the world. Our robotics team will be in Dallas in May for the Worlds. So they really are they are working to develop their public speaking, their presence, their leadership. Now, I will say, are they all good at it? Of course not. They're children, they're adolescents. Any school you have that.
Yeah.
And I do think sometimes when you have a particular population of quite bright, often gifted children, sometimes, and you will see this in the literature around giftedness, there are at times, there is a need to support social skills at times. There is oftentimes, in all of our schools, there is neurodiversity. And so good schools and good teachers are mindful that no matter who you have in your school, you are going to still have to be addressing the social emotional needs the ability to stand up and speak and to present. So,
Mhm.
but I think that that's very much embedded within our overall program.
Yeah, well, that's very nice. And one of the questions I always love asking folks on the podcast is, what is one misconception about education that you think a lot of people have that are not in education?
Well, I think one of the misconceptions that we always deal with is that the way that we were taught is the way that it should happen today.
Mm,
But even in teacher training programs, we see the notion that this is how I was taught, so this is what I know, and therefore I'm going to replicate what I know.
right.
And I do think sometimes it's a little bit of a misconception. I mean, people are always well-meaning, but I do believe sometimes there is a perception or a misconception that anybody can walk into a classroom and teach a lesson, which is delightful.
Good luck, yeah.
Good luck. But, I've never had anybody say, I think I could go into that surgery theater and do that operation.
Hmm,
But sometimes, but I do think there's a bit of a sense that, teaching is just natural. How hard can it be? And if anybody has ever watched a master teacher and seen what they are doing and then actually understood the thousands of decisions that they are making at any one point in time over a 70-minute lesson,
yeah.
it's a skill. And I am in awe of those who do it so flawlessly. So I think it's a misconception that it's easy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there is this funny stat I was reading that a lot of, I think it was like 67% of men think they could land a plane. And I'm like,
Absolutely.
good luck.
Yeah. Good luck to you.
Because I don't think that's how it works, right? And I
It's not
think
how it works. Yeah.
just because education and teaching seems like a very like soft skill, like, oh, you're just public speaking or you're just speaking to a group of kids. I think people, think it's a lot easier. And when they go into a 70-minute session and they realize how exhausting but also exhilarating it is
Yeah.
sometimes, I think there's more appreciation built around
I
that.
think so too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And innovation is something that's definitely, I've been seeing a lot of schools trying to innovate, even with the AI, wave that's been coming through
Mhm.
all of us, and everyone's talking about it, everyone's asking questions about it. There's sort of this innate, maybe pressure isn't the right word, but I do feel like there's some innate pressure for schools to respond and to
Yeah.
say, we're doing this, or we're doing this, so here's innovation. But I want to hear from you what innovation to you really looks like in education.
That is such a good question because there are a lot of bells and whistles that that we sometimes associate with innovation. I think for me, real innovation is a responsiveness to um, what is happening in your school and what is happening on the horizon, and trying to make sure that you are bringing your practice, your students, your teachers' understanding to that point on the horizon that is the right place to be when it's grounded in evidence that supports um, that it supports student learning.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things that happen in schools as innovations. And when we actually look at the learning outcomes and the impact on learning, there's a very, very small effect size. And as a matter of fact, there are times when what we think of as this great innovative product or idea is actually doing the opposite of what it's supposed to do. One of the best examples is years and years ago, they had baby Mozart, that if you put your child in front of this screen,
Right.
and if you actually had them listen to this baby Mozart program and had them spend time in it, that this would be enhancing cognitive development. We would have smarter children. And of course, it all sounded fine.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the research showed that over periods of time, children ended up with language deficiencies and later language development.
Interesting.
So I
Right.
think I'm all for innovation. Absolutely. I am all for exploring new horizons. I am all for things that will engage students in hands-on learning and in creating their own meaningful learning experiences. I think AI offers incredible opportunities
Mhm.
and dangers, but I also think that good schools need to be mindful of the impact it's having on the outcomes.
Mm.
Because sometimes it seems to make sense.
Yeah.
Play Mozart for your baby. What could go wrong?
Right.
But what happens is it's not the outcome that we think it's going to be.
It's like this concept in econ, which is, adverse effects and sort of
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you intend it for something, but it does something else. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think technology is very powerful in the sense that it's very easy for that to happen as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. All right, we're going to shift gears into our rapid fire round now. So
Okay.
I will shoot you a question and then under a minute you could respond to it.
Okay.
Easy fit. So
I will be ready.
yeah, the first question is one word to describe your leadership style.
Authentic.
Authentic. I love it. That's a very nice one. Haven't heard that before. What's one thing you have changed your mind on recently?
Laptops in classrooms.
Pro or against?
Balanced.
Balanced. Okay, I like it. What is one part of your daily routine that you can't skip?
My early morning cup of tea when no one else is around.
What's early morning?
I get up around 5:30.
Wow, that is early.
Yeah.
And what type of tea do you like?
Yorkshire Gold
Yorkshire Gold.
only.
Okay, we'll take note of it for next time.
Thank you.
If you could redesign one thing about our current education system, what would it be?
That the Ministry of Education at the secondary level would allow us to do away with discrete courses and would allow us to create more cross-curricular learning.
I love that. Wow, that's a really nice one. And if you could swap jobs with anyone for a day, who would it be and why?
I thought about this. Okay, it has to be one of two. And this is only dependent upon me somehow miraculously having the skill that goes along with it.
Yeah, of course you do.
Of course. But it would be either a chef or an opera singer.
Oh, those are two very different ones.
No, but they're both creative.
Both creative.
Yeah.
I assume you enjoy cooking too?
I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
very nice. What's your favorite restaurant in Toronto?
Oh, my favorite restaurant in Toronto right now, there's a really fun new restaurant just south of Wellesley called 555 Boat Noodles, which is Thai.
Thai.
Very tiny.
I'm going to take mental note of that because I might go there sometime. I love Thai food. A student moment that made you smile recently.
In one of our math classes, the teacher had made an assignment for students to use trigonometric equations to then create a piece of art.
Oh.
And the teacher brought it to me, and the student had created quite an accurate portrait of the teacher.
Oh, really?
And
really
it was
funny.
A little bit cheeky, but incredibly well done, actually.
They followed the instructions, didn't they?
They did. And it just made me smile.
Fair play. Fair play. And last one on the rapid fire. What's one thing you've learned from your students?
One thing I've learned from my students, that's actually a really good one. One thing I've learned from my students is to listen to them more.
Okay.
Yeah. That they need to be heard. And that if I don't give them opportunities, they will find them anyway. So
they'll find a way to share what they're feeling.
That's what I've learned from them, yes. How important it is that we're listening.
That is really nice. I like that. All right, we're going to shift into our last question. So we do this little tradition around here, which is called the final question. So we have our previous guests leave questions for our next guest. So we'll have a question from one of our previous guests. I'll tell you who they are.
All right.
And then you would get to leave a question for our next guest.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, let's see. I really like this one. So this is from Tracy Fosher. She's the deputy head of, I believe, academics at Holy Trinity School.
I know Tracy.
Oh, you know Tracy?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. Now you can take it up with her.
Okay.
Okay. All right. The question is, if you had to choose one value to carry forward in your life, what would it be, knowing that all others could not be used?
Oh, heavens.
Tracy, come on.
I need to talk to Tracy. If I could only have one value. I think it would have to be compassion.
Compassion. Beautiful. I like that. All right. Now we'll have you leave a question for our next guest.
Okay.
So whatever comes to mind, could be as tricky as Tracy's or simpler.
I won't be as nasty as she was. Okay.
All right.
There we
Wonderful.
go.
Thank you so much.
You are most welcome.
All right. Well, to everyone that tuned in, thank you so much for listening in. I hope you got amazing insights because I did for sure. And Leanne, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you
it
so
was
much.
so nice. It was a pleasure.
It was
talking to
wonderful.
you.
I appreciated it.
Thank you.
Thanks.